Live from Los Angeles, welcome back to Good Morning LaLa Land, providing a fresh voice for a new generation of thinkers. Best-selling author and overall provocateur Marissa Orr is with us today. Thank you so much, Marissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation to lean out, the antithesis of Sheryl Sandberg's lean in. Tell us about your journey.
So the journey to this book has been a long one. I worked at Google for about 13 years, and then I left and worked at Facebook for about a year and a half. And I've always been really passionate about helping women and women's issues in general. But attending all these female leadership programs and all these workshops and events at Google and Facebook over the years, I became a bit disenchanted, I'll say, because instead of really listening to all the valid concerns and challenges of the women in the room, we were essentially being lectured on how to act more like men. And I couldn't think of anything less feminist or less empowering than holding up men as the benchmark to which we should aspire.
Wow.
True.
So what does that look like? How do we step more powerfully into our leadership within the workplace?
So there's a bunch of things I talk about and go into detail about in the book, but a lot of it is around the things about the system in corporate America that are broken. And the book's really a critique on sort of corporate America and that structure. And books like Lean In and others of that nature, they really pin the blame for the gender gap on stereotypes and culture. And like I said, their prescriptions for success hinge on women acting more like men. Whereas I believe if men and women want and need different things in the workplace, which I think they do, that's okay. Instead of dismissing women's needs as a product of cultural oppression, I think we need to really listen to them and see what is it about the corporate structure that needs to change.
So what do we need as women?
So there's two things. One is a systems change, right? Because I talk a lot about why the system is so dysfunctional and why that leads to the gender gap, along with many other things, not just the imbalance of men and women at the top. Power structures are really hard to change, though. So I devote an entire chapter to women as individuals. If we're unhappy in that world, in the corporate structure, what we can do to sort of take care of ourselves and what true empowerment really means. And that chapter and the answer to your question is really measuring our success on well-being instead of winning. In the corporate world, everything is about winning, and everything is a zero-sum game. If I win a promotion, you lost one. And it really, I think, compromises so much of our well-being, and success in that world is defined so narrowly, your income and your position on the ladder. But if working longer hours and playing more office politics, and if that all reduces the quality of our lives, I don't know how we can really call that success. So it's really one of the big messages in the book is defining success on your own terms. And I suggest, at least what worked for me, was using well-being as the metric that I strive for instead of just winning.
Oh, I just love that. And I love sort of this whole conversation revolving around sort of redefining success for yourself. And I wonder, when you talk about well-being, from a positive psychology perspective, I feel like I know what it means to me.
Yeah.
How would you describe or define well-being for those folks who might not be clear what that is?
So it's really about, and again, there's a whole chapter on this in the book. It's the last chapter, actually, but it's really about understanding who you are and what it is that you need, your emotional needs. And we all have slightly different emotional needs. And it's also about recognizing that our institutions in the corporate world, as they're designed today, they're not designed to fulfill a lot of those needs. And once we realize that and accept it, then it becomes up to us to fulfill them. So for example, I'm really creative. That was something that was really hard to express in that sort of very strict power structure. So when I decided to write the book, I'd wake up every morning, like an hour and a half before my kids would get up, and I'd work on the book before I went off to work at Facebook. And I go into this a lot in the book in the beginning, in the prologue. Facebook was much different than I expected. It was one of the darkest times of my life. But fulfilling that need for creativity on my own, suddenly I felt powerful in a situation that otherwise I felt incredibly powerless. So to me, empowerment is about recognizing what your needs are and then figuring out how to fill them yourself. That's true empowerment to me. And I go into more detail in the book, but I think that's really the essence of it.
You're speaking my language, because I run another company, Society, and it's interesting because you want everyone to have their voice, but you're afraid if you actually ask them that they're going to have all these needs that you can't fulfill. I love that you say, have them recognize what they want, but then have them also know that they have to create that. So come to the table with how they want to create that within that organization, which is really interesting.
And it's not easy. Just the journey to understand yourself is a lifetime of work. I still work on it every day, and I learn new things all the time. But, well-being isn't easy, and, empowerment takes work and all of that.
So what does being a modern day feminist mean to you?
I don't really know. That label it's so fraught with, so much, there's so many connotations to that word. At the end of the day, I love women, and I love helping women, and I felt we were getting the short end of the stick in the corporate world, and it wasn't because we were deficient in some way, which is what everybody seemed to be implying. It was because that system was built and conceived by men a couple hundred years ago at a time where there were no women in the workforce. So what makes more sense? Rewiring women to conform to this outdated system, or rewiring the system to better meet the needs of women? That's what I believe. The label on that, I don't know. If feminist means that you believe in helping women, and yes, absolutely, I'll wear that title proudly. But I don't know beyond that.
I love that. So is the book for both the woman that's trying to figure out her place and the corporation that goes, how do I adjust our culture?
Yeah, there's a chapter in there for all the changes that would need to be made to those structures in order for women to be happier and more successful in that world. And then a chapter as individuals, what women can do. But really the book, and it's not just about women, it's really a cultural critique of corporations. And it's an honest, I sort of like pour my heart and soul in all these honest stories about what happened to me at Google and Facebook. And I think what's so interesting is women tell me all the time how much they related to those stories. Like, people think of Google and Facebook as operating sort of differently in this modern sort of progressive kind of ethos. And it's really, in any large corporation, it's all the same, because it's all like this zero-sum competition for power. So the book is really not just for women or about women. It's really my stories and offering a totally new perspective on that world, and an honest one. And I don't think we hear a lot of honesty when it comes to, one, how women really think and feel about that world, and then also how that world operates.
I love that. Well, tell people where they can find and follow you and get your book.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter as Marissa Beth Orr. I'm on Instagram as the same Marissa Beth Orr. And you can read the prologue to the book, which is the whole story of how I came to write this, which is pretty crazy. It's at Medium, where it's just Marissa Orr is my name on Medium.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
important.
Thanks so
Really
much. It's great
appreciate
to
you.
be here.
Stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Good morning, La La Land.